And it's also a personal honor tonight to introduce the gentleman who will present George Archer, one of our own from the Bay Area, and I can personally attest, having had the chance to work alongside him, one of the greatest gentlemen I have ever met in the television business, which he got into after his great golf career. Please welcome Bay Area legend Ken Venturi.
Well, I'll tell you what, they talk about short games. I have a great short game. Unfortunately, now it's off the tee. It's an honor for me to be asked to present this award tonight. George Archer would have been 73 this year. He died in 2005. George turned pro in 1964 and won the very next year the tournament known as the Lucky International or the San Francisco Open. George was a very, very humble man. He never complained or never made excuses. Not many knew of his severe learning disability, but which showed in his humbleness. George won 12 times on the PGA Tour. They make a big deal, 69 Masters, a major championship, if you win 3 or 4 times. His most memorable victory was the 1969 Masters, a major championship. But after numerous surgeries on his back, shoulder, wrist, hip, he was able to win 19 times on the senior tour. He was 6'5.5" and didn't look very comfortable over the ball as shorter players did in those days because of equipment. But if I had to name one of the greatest putters and short game players of all time, George just may be my pick. For instance, in Sea Pines, Georgia, in 1980, in 72 holes, he only had 94 putts. But let me say this, there's a saying, you don't have to be better than anybody else, but only better than you ever thought you could be. And he did just that. And I can say the world will never remember you for what you take from it, but only what you leave behind. And the game is honored that he passed our way. But I just love one of his greatest quotes when they asked him. George is credited with great quotes to saying, if it wasn't for golf, what would you do? He said, I'd probably be a caddy. I'll never forget that as long as I live. For his disability that he had, and his learning disability, his humbleness, his sincerity, and his giving back. As we said, the world will never remember you, what you take from it, only what you leave behind. And now, to accept the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame Award, it is an honor and a privilege to present to you George Archer's greatest victory of all time. Donna, we love you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to Mr. Ken Venturi for that great introduction. Thank you for being such a good friend to George and to me over the years. for being so wonderful to golf to San Francisco. And thank you for flying up to make this presentation. And thank you also, Kathleen Venturi. Thank you to the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame. This is really, really good. I also congratulate the other inductees as we all share this unforgettable evening. On behalf of George, I accept this award with heartfelt thanks. George started his professional career with only 3 and cooked spaghetti, a swing that prevented him from ever being a very long or always accurate driver of the ball. Secondly, he had a body that broke down more times than a 1958 Ford Edsel. And thirdly, he suffered learning problems that plagued him and caused him anguish his entire life. The first time that George saw the young Jack Nicklaus play at Pebble Beach, he took note of the fact that Nicklaus had the strength and solidity of one of California's great redwood trees, while he, George, was like a willow tree in the wind. He decided then and there, if he wanted to play on the PGA Tour, he had better hone himself a great short game. And so he did, practicing endless hours on the putting greens of San Francisco's great Lincoln Park and Harding Park golf courses. First, he had the wrong body for golf, too tall, too gangly. George's swing had more loops and curls than cooked spaghetti. A swing that prevented him from ever being a very long or always accurate driver of the ball. Secondly, he had a body that broke down more times than a 1958 Ford Edsel. And thirdly, he suffered learning problems that plagued him and caused him anguish his entire life. The first time that George saw the young Jack Nicklaus play at Pebble Beach, he took note of the fact that Nicklaus had the strength and solidity of one of California's great redwood trees, while he, George, was like a willow tree in the wind. He decided then and there, if he wanted to play on the PGA Tour, he had better hone himself a great short game. And so he did, practicing endless hours on the putting greens of San Francisco's great Lincoln Park and Harding Park golf courses. Taking a quarter or two from his benefactors and donors, as he developed a short game that was music and magic. George did not have a strong physicality, little endurance and lasting strength, and for most of his career, his life, he was in pain or sick or in the body shop, repairing his body parts as they continued to come unhinged, unglued, or were simply no longer functional. Who was George Archer? Off the course, George was street smart, witty, friendly, fun, talkative, truthful, and incapable of manipulation by flattery. He could have used a little of that. He was loyal to a fault, humble about his golf, while bragging about the size of the fish he caught. He could also tell some really bad jokes. On the course, he was pro-smart, intensely competitive, tenacious, determined, sometimes patient, relentlessly hardworking, focused, very serious, and extremely well prepared. He knew and loved his sport, and he knew how to win. Anyone who ever saw him come out of the deep recesses of the trees or the rough was well reminded of the gravel in his gut and the spit in his eye. The professional George was rather like a sway-backed, underrated racehorse, which, upon approaching the starting gate and hearing the bell, transformed into Seabiscuit, often finishing in first place. If George was too tall for the optimally solid golf swing, less strong physically for the great endurance required for a long career, and burdened by secrets of learning problems, how did he do it? How did George overcome the adversaries, opponents, challenges, and obstacles he faced in his life? What did he have in here that wasn't seen? He had the only gift he needed. He had the gift of courage. Or, if you prefer the slang, he had guts. This quality is what set him apart from his own disabilities and allowed him to have such a long and successful career. George's courage was in his DNA. He did not develop it. He did not travel to the land of Oz and ask the wizard for it. He was born with it, as if it was ordained that he would always be a warrior. Not once. And don't feel sad for a moment. I've had the best life a person could have. Courageous is who George Archer was, and it is what we want to remember most about him. When you think of George Archer, if you think of him, don't think of him as Curious George or George of the Jungle. Remember him as Courageous George, because that word describes his essence, his core, his heart. Thank you again for this great honor. Thank you to our daughters, Elizabeth and Marilyn, sons-in-law, Jeff and Alexi, 7 awesome grandchildren. Thank you to the many family members and friends who are here tonight. Thank you to the Peninsula Golf Club, Golf and Country Club, for the opportunities given to George so that he could build a life when he was a 13-year-old. And thank you for continuing that tradition by providing opportunities and friendships to me as we go forward with our foundation, raising funds to help children learn how to read and write. Thank you to the Charles Armstrong School for expertly providing the skills and tools for children so they can accomplish those goals. And I'm very grateful to my dear friend Mike Jameson for being the creative force that puts all that together. George would be very grateful that you have been also so supportive of these visions. A very special hug to Tom Martz. But most of all, thank you, George, for your hard work, achievements, and the example of a courageous life well lived. Thank you.